If you're starting up a business, there are many different ways of doing it, one of which is to do so with a partner or a group of partners. Then you are not alone. You can receive feedback and reinforcement from each other. Another way to launch a business is to do so from having worked in that industry prior. You already have experience at it to some degree by your job history. These two are the most common forms of business startups, either having partners or previous experience. If neither of these exists, then you would tend to fall back on the traditional forms of support, family members and long-term friends, those who, while they are not directly involved in what you are doing, or at least aware of it, they champion your cause. You can count on them at a minimum to ask you from time to time, how's it going? Then you could be operating in a vacuum completely, where none of the above has anything to do with you. They simply don't apply as factors. That is where a coach would come in, sometimes referred to as a mentor, where coach and mentor mean more or less the same thing. Someone who works with you one-on-one to aid, assist, guide, and whatever else they can do to help you reach that next level of your business goal, or at least become aware of what it takes to get yourself there. If you are absent of partners, absent of experience in certain regards, and those traditional forms of support are either absent or not there as strong as would be needed, then I would highly recommend getting yourself a coach. Not just any coach, but a good one. Because anyone can recommend Leroy down the block to coach you. Sometimes when I'm grocery shopping, the main thing on my mind is how much something costs. I want to be able to get it as inexpensively as possible. I don't recommend the same when shopping for a coach. You don't want to go cheap when it comes to that, because you are not only entrusting that person with business advice, you may also find yourself leaning on them for a certain degree of emotional support as well, even if it is an occasional. You can do this once in a while. Well, I would recommend that you get yourself a coach who is good. I'll be the first to say, I'm no expert on finding them. It's not like I can whip out a list of professionals to choose from, which would not make sense to even try coming up with. For one thing, it depends on where you live, which city and state, as I think the closer you are geographically to your coach, the better, because that person would have a good understanding about the lay of the land where you are. So if they say a particular document needs to be filed at City Hall, you can rest assured they know what they are talking about, because it is not a completely different City Hall for them than it is for you. Another factor is the type of business you are planning on going into. Yes, it is true certain applications are necessary regardless to the type of business it is. But you don't want to tap someone who has no clue whatsoever about your industry. Some familiarization is important. I am only familiar with 2 different coaches, one female and the other male. The female worked with my daughter in her startup, which I am aware of the details of, which I am not going to divulge. Despite this being a social media platform, I practice confidentiality courtesy. The other coach is the male, of whom I almost hired for myself, but didn't. There was absolutely no negative reason I changed my mind about him, but I will say a determining factor had to do with this venture being recorded in a video journal. That being the case, some viewers might happen across it down the road. How would it look if at a certain point I reached into my pocket and paid someone directly for their services? To me, it would make more sense to do it as economically as possible. The point I'm making in this clip is a point I should stress. I'm not adverse to any sort of coaching or mentoring whatsoever. I'm 100% for it as an assistance mechanism. Currently, I'm seeking assistance through my Regional Small Business Development Center, SBDC. I've had my introductory one-on-one call with them. The next step will be to get myself aligned with their PTAC representative, which is kind of like a subject matter expert. None of this is or will cost me any money at all. Nothing. So if it is assistance available from a highly recommended source, and that assistance is free, well now, that absolutely changes things around. Somewhere in a future video, I'll probably get around to talking about the SBDC and how I came about getting lined up with them. I'm also finding out quite recently there's something called a corporate sponsored mentor, which is where a Fortune 500 company has set aside part of their charitable contribution to aid startups getting running. With some of them, there appears to be a low bar to qualify for this free service. I don't know much about it at this point. I'm still exploring it. You can count on me to share with you whatever I find out. One of the pleasant surprises I did not know about in the beginning is how much free stuff there is out there. I just have to figure out the proper ways of searching for it. For example, in the next video, I'll walk you through the process of applying for my very first grant. I had assumed I would have to wait until I had achieved minority certification before applying for any grant money whatsoever. But surprisingly, I was able to complete and submit an application with relative ease, which some of you might find to be interesting to view.